Hi, I'm Leo Roth, sports columnist at the Democrat and Chronicle, and with me is Jim Lanson, a Webster resident. And the purpose here is just to tell you what's going on. We have a big package running over the weekend online and in the Sunday paper on the 50th anniversary of Major Don Holleder's death in Vietnam, killed in action on October 17th, 1967. And Tuesday is the date, and Jim he's the organizer of a day of remembrances for Major Holleder. We can let you know about his life a little bit, what's going on Tuesday. And Jim, first of all, welcome. And what can you tell us about the whole genesis of you kind of learning more about Don Holleder, being inspired by his story, and that led you to kind of get the ball rolling on Tuesday's activities?
Thank you very much, Leo. I knew the story about Don Holleder as a child, going to the Rochester Lancer games, being told from my father that he was killed in Vietnam. But I didn't know all the other things, all the great things about the life that he lived. And it actually started last fall when I was on the Vietnam Veterans Wall Memorial website, and there's an option to click by hometown, and I entered Webster. And I was just floored that I saw Don Holleder's name, and further found out more that he was technically from Webster, according to the military, because his mother lived there
Right.
the last 29 and a half years of her life. And from there, it took me branching out to contacting his former roommate from West Point, a retired Air Force general by the name of Perry Smith. He put me in touch with two of Don Holleder's four daughters, another gentleman by the name of Ransom Jerry Amlong, another roommate from the class of '56, just a dear friend of Don. And from there, it continued onward to talk to more people in the military that are currently active duty, as well as some veterans.
Yeah, it is an inspiring story, like you said, Jim. And I know when I first moved to Rochester 30-some years ago, I covered some soccer games at Aquinas Stadium, and it's like, okay, who is this Holleder fellow? And of course, you hear about his exploits as a three-sport athlete at Aquinas.
Right. Yeah.
He was much in demand. Everyone thought he was going to go to Notre Dame. He ends up telling Frank Leahy, no, he's going to go to the United States Military Academy, kind of fulfill a wish of his father, who passed away when he was only 15.
Correct.
So he goes to West Point. He's an All-American N. What did you find out at West Point that was most inspiring? And of course, it was again, how he showed what the meaning of being a real teammate and being an unselfish player was.
Exactly, putting the team before self, and that's why we currently have today something called the Black Lion Award. When he was a junior, he was an All-American as an end, and it was just an amazing thing to think that this local person, such stardom back then, but he would not let that go to his head. Between his junior and senior year, the coach, who was a colonel in the Army, asked him to play quarterback his upcoming senior year. He gave him overnight to think about it. He came back the next day, and I'm your quarterback, sir. Yeah. And he was hurt in spring practice, came back in the fall, though, for that senior year. Struggled at times, especially with his accuracy, and they did receive, not only he, but the coach especially received a lot of negative comments from the higher-ups, the brass at West Point, but yeah. Coach Blake kept with him, and they upset Navy 14-6 before 102,000 people. The night before, Coach Blake was giving the team a pep talk, and he said that he feared that tomorrow was going to be the longest walk of his life because they had already had 2 defeats. And only one voice spoke up, and that was the voice of Don Holleder saying, "Sir, you will not have to make that walk tomorrow."
Yeah. Great. That story is part of college lore. It's not just Army lore, but college lore. And this was a time when Army was, college football fans today might not think, but back in the 40s and 50s, 3-time national champ. They were
Right.
nationally ranked. They had several unbeaten teams, and Red Blake was the guy. He was bigger than life, and he spawned like 21 assistants that went on to great careers. One of them, Vince Lombardi, of course.
Yes.
Don was drafted after his Army days. After 3 years of completing his military duty, could have gone and had a professional career in football. He told Vince Lombardi, he was with the Giants then, he said, "Thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to fulfill my my dream early." And he fell in love with the military life, so he
Right.
stayed in the military and was moving up the ranks for the next 10 years. 1967, Vietnam War is escalating. It's they still believe it's winnable. A lot of the people, some of the teammates that you mentioned, Jim, I did interview them for this series of stories, and they talked about a lot of them. The officers at West Point, they did felt a sense of this was an opportunity to go over there, serve in combat, further their careers, and they also felt. Don told a friend at the time. He said he would have been like a hypocrite to train officers if he wasn't willing to go to combat himself. So of course he went to Vietnam, and was only there 3 months when he died in action. What did you learn about how he passed away heroically in the battle? And he was very much decorated for his bravery that day.
I learned that from watching a DVD that was produced for the 60th anniversary, the reunion at West Point for the class of '56, and Don Holleder was one of 11 men from that class that were killed in Vietnam. And in the video, Tom Hinger, who was a medic, he had already been in the battle, and it was quite the firefight, and many men were already killed. And he was coming out of the jungle, and Don Holleder had landed in a helicopter wanting to go back in to rescue these other troops because he had seen from above that they could be rescued. And as he was leading a rescue party, he was cut down by a sniper, and he actually died in Tom Hinger's arms.
Right.
But he wasn't thinking about anything other than trying to get to those men.
Grabbed up some men, said, "Doc Hinger, follow me," and just kind of ran in, and he ran ahead of them, just like he was on the football field, just running into it. And quite the story, quite inspiring. Many decades later now, 5 decades, and Don Holleder has been remembered. There was, we mentioned the Aquinas Stadium, which was raised in knocked down in 1985 because it had gotten so in rough shape. But it has carried on. There is the technology park on that site on Ridgeway Avenue. A few years back, the Army Reserve Center in Webster was renamed. Aquinas, of course, has a nice hallway display of in tribute to this great alumnus, an American hero. And then, of course, at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial at Highland Park, the one in Washington, D.C. as well, you can find Don's presence and spirit among all his comrades is still there. So, Tuesday is the 50th anniversary. What are maybe you can tell everyone what's planned for Tuesday's memorial?
Sure. There's 2 ceremonies scheduled that day. One that's going to be more of a private ceremony at Aquinas for his classmates and teammates. He graduated in 1952 from Aquinas. Their student body is going to participate. They're all going to go outside to the front lawn. A flag was raised on August 3rd on Capitol Hill, which would have been Don Holleder's 83rd birthday. And all the students at Aquinas are going to see that flag be raised on the morning of October 17th. Later in the day, at the Army Reserve Center in Webster, there's going to be a public ceremony. That's open to everybody. There will be some active duty personnel, reservists, veterans, but we're hoping a number of area high school football players to come because we're going to talk about the Black Lion Award eligibility there. And before the ceremony starts, the Patriot Guard, they're incredibly honored to be a part of this. They're going to be going out to Aquinas to accept the flag, and they're going to drive it across the Adirondack-White Bay Bridge, make 2 stops that are very personal to the Holleder family. Don Holleder's mother resides in Webster Union Cemetery. They're going to have a moment to pause for her and then head on to their former home on Lake Road in Webster, because that is where she was informed on the evening of October 17th, 1967, that her only child, Don Holleder, was killed in action in Vietnam.
Yeah. Well, Jim, you should be congratulated for being inspired just out of a history guy who has great respect for our military. You kind of got the ball rolling on this whole thing, and I know it's much appreciated by the family, talking to them for the stories that I've written, and it is going to be moving. 280 men from Rochester died out of the 58,000, more than 58,000 in that war. They all, anyone who put on the uniform certainly is a hero in their own way. Don Holleder, with the sports background and being as popular and much of a celebrity as was, we do remember him, but of course we remember all the men that served and died in all our wars. So it's and I know Don Holleder from I think a bit of understanding, a bit of his spirit. He'd probably feel, if he was alive, he'd feel a little bit maybe embarrassed by all this, but he Certainly it means a lot, and by recognizing him, we recognize everybody on Tuesday.
True. All 279 others and Don Holleder, we'll never forget those men and their sacrifice in the name of freedom for our country.
Yeah. So that's great. So we're going to wrap up here. I do know that the Black Lion Award, a lot of the high school coaches out there, if you haven't heard about this award, please go online, Google it up. We'll have some more information on that in the paper as well. But it's a great way to not just keep his memory alive, but to also honor deserving kids and have them thinking about what this award is about. Teamwork and self-sacrifice and all the things, character, all these great things that football players or coaches are always trying to instill in their kids. So I know that's one of the goals of this as well, is to spread the word about that. So, Jim, thanks for coming in, and please check out our stories this weekend at democraticnchronicle.com. And on Tuesday, the public is welcome to come out to the memorial at the Reserve Center in Webster. So, thank you.